of the Dog in the Nighttime. Author's Craft Summative Project by Leilani Noel Eckert. The book that I chose to read for this assignment is called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, written by Mark Haddon. The book is about a 15-year-old boy with autism named Christopher Boone. One night, Christopher found a dead dog in his neighbor's backyard and was determined to solve the mystery of who killed Wellington the dog. Later in the book, Christopher finds out that his father was the one who killed Wellington. Christopher also finds out that his mother, who he thought/was told had died of a heart attack, had been writing letters to him for years. Christopher, frightened and no longer trusting his father, sets out to find his mother. Throughout his journey, Christopher is writing down everything that happens in a book, which results in the novel being told through Christopher's eyes. The first picture is when Christopher finds that Wellington has been murdered, and the second picture is when Christopher finds out that his mother had been alive for years. Characterization. In the book, the main character is Christopher, and Haddon constructs the story as if Christopher were the author. This is an important technique as it reveals much about Christopher. When Christopher writes, he doesn't use slang and rarely uses contractions. Also, when he is upset or excited, he starts to ramble, and his sentence structure changes from short and precise to long and off-topic. This is very important to the author's use of characterization. The way Christopher writes and his personality tells the reader that Christopher is not normal, because it is never directly stated that Christopher has autism. Therefore, the author is using indirect characterization, a technique used throughout the novel. Christopher is a dynamic but static character. The first picture shows Christopher, and the second picture shows that Christopher doesn't like to be touched, so when he wants to give someone a hug, or reverse, he spreads his fingers into a fan and touches hands with that person. Examples of characterization in the book. Quote 1. And then she showed me this picture. Smile emoji. And I knew that it meant happy, like when I'm reading about the Apollo space missions, or when I'm awake at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning and I can walk up and down the street and pretend that I am the only person in the whole world. Page 2. Quote 2. There were lots of people on the train, and I didn't like that, because I don't like lots of people I don't know, and I hate it even more if I am stuck in a room with lots of people I don't know, and a train is like a room and you can't get out of it when it's moving. Page 158. Explanations. Quote 1. Though the reader is only on page 2, many things can be inferred about Christopher from this passage. In the quote, Christopher is talking about how he knows what a happy face means. Just from this, the reader can infer that Christopher struggles understanding human emotions. It shows that he has a fondness for science and that he enjoys being alone. Quote 2. This quote shows how Christopher handles situations involving a large group of people, especially ones he doesn't know. Christopher tells us that he doesn't like people, which contributes to his personality. This use of characterization is direct. Explanation continued. Just from these two examples, the reader can infer that Christopher is unusual, doesn't like to be around people, and doesn't understand human emotions. Furthermore, it is later revealed that Christopher not only has difficulty relating to people on an emotional level, but also on a physical one. He does not like to be touched. For example, in the book, Christopher's arm is grabbed by a policeman, and he starts to scream and ends up hitting him. Christopher's disabilities make it harder for him to communicate with and understand others. Christopher's father takes advantage of this, which ultimately results in the events that lead up to the main conflict of the story. Diction. Since the story is written through Christopher's point of view, Haddon must confine his use of diction and literary devices to what would make sense for someone with Christopher's limited understanding of people. However, Christopher uses a lot of similes. He likes to compare himself to other objects or things. Christopher also likes to sometimes draw little pictures, intending to help readers better understand what's going on in the book. Tone is also a significant feature of the book. Most of Christopher's thoughts are delivered in a scientific form, precise and lacking emotion. This picture to the right of the paragraph is a clip art of someone writing. This represents that the book is written by Christopher. Examples of diction in the book. Quote 1. My memory is like a film. That is why I am really good at remembering things, like the conversations I have written down in this book, and what people are wearing, and what they smelled like, because my memory has a smell track, which is like a soundtrack. Page 76. Quote 2. I had to get out of the house. Father had murdered Wellington. That meant he could murder me, because I couldn't trust him, even though he had said, trust me, because he had told a lie about a big thing. Page 122. Explanations. Quote 1. This quote is an example of Christopher's use of similes. Not only does he use one simile, but he uses two. He states that his memory is like a film, and that his smell track is like a soundtrack. He delivers his explanation very precisely and matter of fact. This quote also goes back to the author's use of characterization. Christopher can remember everything, everyone, and every detail. Quote 2. This quote shows that despite the tension growing between Christopher and his father, he is still able to explain his reaction in a logical way. There is no emotionally charged vocabulary to suggest that he is doing anything other than explaining, A happened, so B must happen. Structure. Due to the fact that Christopher is the one writing the book, it is hard to follow the plot, how the plot is supposed to line up exactly. When Christopher writes, he writes his chapters in prime numbers. He starts out writing about discovering Wellington's death, and then jumps to him having a learning session with a teacher at his school. The events, as they are told by Christopher, are done almost from a stream of consciousness point of view. This type of narrative helps to build suspense for the reader. While the reader learns more about Christopher, when he goes off topic, they desire to learn more about the murder of the dog, which is the main plot conflict. Christopher's typically short, direct sentences help to keep the pace of the novel quick and interesting. The picture on the right of the paragraph is a clip art of someone thinking. This represents that the book is based off of Christopher's thoughts. Examples of structure in the book. Quote 1. I wondered whether Mrs. Shears had told the police that I had killed Wellington, and whether, when the police had found out that she had lied, she would go to prison, because telling lies about people is called a slander. Go to next chapter. I find people confusing. This is for two main reasons. The first main reason is that people do a lot of talking without using any words. Siobhan says that if you raise one eyebrow, it can mean lots of different things. Page 14. Quote 2. I do not tell lies. Mother used to say that this was because I was a good person. But it is not because I am a good person. It is because I can't tell lies. Page 19. Explanations. Quote 1. This quote clearly illustrates how Christopher jumps from one topic to the next. The reader is left wondering about Mrs. Shears and whether she accused Christopher of killing the dog to discussing why people are confusing him. This type of narrative leaves the reader with a cliffhanger as to what is going to happen next where the murder of Wellington is concerned. At the same time, though these interjections from Christopher give the reader more insight as to who he is. Quote 2. This quote is an example of Christopher using short, to-the-point sentences, which helps to maintain the quick pacing of the novel. It is also another glimpse at Christopher's matter-of-fact way of looking at life. He can't lie simply because he can't. Mark Haddon's craft as an author is driven by characterization, because the diction and structure all revolve around Christopher. Due to the fact that the book is written by Christopher, everything therefore is based off of his perspective. The way he writes his sentences, the way he handles being around people, and the way he jumps from topic to topic are all part of who Christopher is. This perspective affects how Christopher delivers the telling of the story, as well as how the conflict of the story is built. It is through Christopher, and the way he interacts with others throughout the course of the story, that the reader learns you shouldn't underestimate anyone despite the fact that they may be different from you. Finn.